You ever worked for a bad leader in terms of the way they treated you or the way they treated people, if they were overly harsh or unreceptive to criticism themselves? If you have to be aware that you may be overcorrecting just to seek approval, to avoid how you felt about that person. Your subconscious really is playing it safe. It's protecting you. It's avoiding embarrassment, or it's avoiding those negative feelings that you experience from the other side. So if you have worked for somebody like that, you got to check yourself and make sure that you're not just doing the opposite without realizing it. But we think by gathering more input and letting everybody say their piece, there is some good in that. People do want to be heard, like I said. There's a high cost to that potentially. If you're showing an inability to be decisive, the people are going to look at you and they're going to see that as inconsistency. They're not going to be able to rely on you to make the call when the time comes. And the reason they want you to do that, even though it might not seem like that, they want you to shoulder that responsibility so they can get on with life and do their part of the task. And when you're not consistent, people don't know who's going to walk through the door on any particular day. And they really need that. They need to come into work every day and they need to know where you're coming from, because if they don't, they're going to be more guarded and you're not going to get the amount or the quality of information you need to do your job. They're going to play it safe. An example of not being consistent as a leader would be sometimes you're very decisive. Sometimes you're making decisions with hardly any input. And on other days, you're just asking everybody in the room what they think. Either one can be right. Point is, people need to know who you are going to be on that day before you even show up. That way they can come prepared and ready to contribute. But if you don't do that, then you lose initiative. And if you're making overly conservative, safe decisions, defensive decisions, then they're going to mimic that. Maybe you're an experienced leader and you consider your leadership skills pretty sharp. You still need to be aware that people are going to mimic your emotions. And that's where leading by example comes from. Do the things that you want others to do in the way you want them to do them. The worst part of being inconsistent when you're a leader, though, is that erosion of trust from the team toward you. Your perceived authenticity starts to go down, and then people see you as living a performance more than anything. You may ask for people's input, and again, you should do that. You're going to look like you're just going through the motions. And conversely, if you say that you're there to make a decision, but you're overly concerned and letting everybody's opinions drive you, it's just an act. You can't lead if you're held hostage by other people's wants and needs and desires. How do we correct this? How do we make sure that we're doing the right things so we come off as confident as well as making the right decisions in the interest of the team? You don't want to just jump to the decision. You want to involve people, but you don't want to come off as arrogant or dismissive of other people. There is such a thing as being too direct. You should use time if it's available. But real leadership is about calm, but also having that edge. You want people to feel comfortable enough to contribute, but you also want them to know that when it's time for the decision, you're going to make it. And then you're going to expect the team to get on board and execute. And here's the way to do that. Prioritize the needs of the group, the task at hand that absolutely must be accomplished, over the approval of the group. Really what you're doing here is you're acting in the interest of the whole group, not changing course based on what you think just a couple people in the group are going to think. And you definitely don't want to think to yourself, is everybody going to agree or is everybody going to be happy with this decision? You'll never get there. The next thing is you want to make decisions based off standard criteria, like a framework. You want stability in the team, and it starts with you as the leader. Focus on expressing that you're making decisions based on logic. And that logic is the same logic that you use day in and day out. The details might be a little different, but people see you evaluating the same criteria. Maybe it starts with quality, then it's profitability, then it's making best use of the talents on your team and aligning people's work with their interests. Come up with something like that where people can see the way that you're making decisions, a framework. And you want to avoid hearing reactive. People should be able to really see why you make the decision that you do. Third thing is, and this is a little bit of an internal consideration, you want your behavior to be value producing instead of likability. And if you think about effective leaders that you've seen or worked with, you may like them, you may have liked them, but that's not what probably stands out in your mind. What stands out in your mind is they were reliable. They were good at their job. Ability is not something that we would associate with respect. What do people respect? They respect consistency, decisiveness, the ability to gather information and then make a call. Because remember, people are interested in themselves and how things that are coming from you affect them primarily. They are probably interested in the team, but they are going to look at it first through their own lens. How does this affect me? And they have to know that your decisions are not for sale by other people who might get you first or some sort of relationship that they perceive as preferential. Unbiased, fair, and focused on the mission. That's what you want. And stay calm, but have that edge. Start out by listening. But when it comes time to make a decision, people have to know that that's it. We all have to be on board and we all have to make it happen. And think about this too. People need to know that just because somebody pushes back, maybe after the meeting or after the group breaks up, that you're not going to waver. If you want to destroy confidence in you quickly, be a fickle leader. Change direction. Not just change direction, but change direction because of small reasons. Complainers. And this is all tricky because you do want people to feel like they can contribute. You want them, you don't just want them, you have to assure them that their opinions matter.